This may come as a surprise, but students generally like when instructors use PowerPoint slides. Presentation slides generally have a bad rap, even though almost all of us use them. And there's good reason they have a bad rap, as I'll explain later in this video, but it's true. Students, when they're asked about teaching technology specifically, they consistently say that they prefer instructors who use PowerPoint slides. And here's the kicker. Simply using a slide presentation in your class can actually give you a measurable bump in your student course evaluations. Now, if you are a busy instructor, you might think at this point, great, I'll just keep throwing up those massive slide decks full of bullet points and I'm good. The students are happy. But here's the catch, the paradox. The research says that students don't actually learn any better from that kind of traditional slide deck. They just think they do. Now, that gap between what students like and what actually helps them learn is the focus of this video. We need to create PowerPoints that are not simply projections of information, but actually tools for learning. And here's the thing, it's not necessarily about better design, at least not in the sense of making your slides prettier or look good. Rather, it's about respecting your students' working memory, and that hints at the core concept for this video, cognitive load theory. So think of your student's brain like a laptop with limited RAM. That's their working memory. Every new piece of information you present, a technical term, a diagram, an idea, is a program running on that RAM. There's only so much bandwidth before the whole system freezes up. Now, the biggest problem with traditional slides is creating redundancy. Now, we often think of redundancy as something that's good for learning, that it can be an aid to learning, but not this kind of redundancy. So here's what happens. You fill your slide with text, and you, the instructor, talk about that text out loud with details, elaborations, and examples, right? Students' working memory has to then process very similar but not exactly the same information in two competing channels, the words they're reading on the screen and the words they're hearing from you. Those two streams of language actually fight for the same limited mental resources, consuming all the brain juice they need to actually understand the new concept. It's what I'll call competing redundancy. The research is pretty clear on this. When you display a significant amount of text on your slides and verbally elaborate on those ideas, your audience comprehends less for the simple reason that they cannot both read and listen at the same time. The solution is not complex, but it requires discipline on your part as the maker of PowerPoint slides. We need to respect the brain's limitations. So in this video, I'm going to give you two big rules to follow for slides that help students learn. And I'll cap it off with tips for working with your slides as a truly interactive learning tool. All right, if competing redundancy is the scientific enemy of learning, then our first, most difficult discipline is reducing the text. This is a non-negotiable commitment you have to make. Your slides need to aim for what I call the 3 by 20 rule. What this means is that your slides should contain 3 or fewer bullet points and 20 or fewer words on any given slide. Now, I know what you're thinking. My entire very complex and subtle and detailed arguments that I'm presenting to my students need more than 20 words, but this rule forces us to respect the brain's limits. The second your slides become a dense block of text, students stop listening to you, the expert, and start reading. And they're not really learning. They're just copying the text frantically before you click to the next slide. But when your text is minimal, your voice becomes the primary source of the complex information. The slides become the cue or support, not the script itself. Your expertise is now in the spotlight. So here's the test. Take your most crowded slide from your slide deck, the one that looks like a page out of your syllabus or textbook. Print it out, and now with a marker, cross out every word that you don't need until you have those 3 bullet points and 20 words left. Now, if that seems impossible, it might be because you have too many complex concepts loaded onto a single slide. In that case, spread the concepts out across several slides. Either way, what should remain on a single slide must be the essential cue that allows you to launch into your detailed argument. It's tough, but it forces your slide to be a learning tool rather than a security blanket for you as the presenter. This discipline, along with using the reveal function to hide the text you're not addressing in the moment, immediately helps the cognitive load problem. It frees up your students' working memory so they can actually focus on and process what you are saying. But cutting text alone isn't enough. We also have to overhaul the structure of the slide. Almost every instructor I know, myself included, for years, uses what is generally the default structure for PowerPoint slides. And it looks like this: a topic at the top, followed by a series of bullet points that are details about the topic. It looks professional, but it's actually not very good for learning. We need to replace that traditional model with the assertion evidence method. This is a research-supported technique linked to better long-term retention and comprehension because it primes the student's brain to engage with the main idea. So here's how you do it. You eliminate that vague topic title, something like Students and PowerPoint. Instead, the top of your slide is an assertion, a full declarative statement. It's like the headline of a newspaper article. It's the main point you want them to know and to understand and to write down. For example, instead of Students and PowerPoint, that title spot makes a claim, something like Students appreciate organization. Then the body of the slide should not contain bullet points of text. It must contain evidence that supports the assertion. If possible, that should be a simple graph, a picture, a short process diagram, or a single relevant image. This works because the visuals are processed in a different part of the brain than words. So in this case, the redundancy is not competing. It's not piling up cognitive load. It's actually reinforcement, what cognitive science calls multimodal learning. And this brings up another common problem with slides: irrelevant or vaguely relevant images. Whenever you put an image on a slide, it should directly reinforce or provide evidence for the words on the slide. So I'm sorry, you should probably stop showing all those pictures of your cats. If the connection between the image and the text is not immediately clear to students, you are introducing extraneous cognitive load. Students now are then having to use their processing power trying to connect the dots rather than focusing on the point that you are making. This is the power then of the assertion evidence method. What you give them is the assertion first, and then their brain instantly shifts into confirmation mode instead of reception mode. They aren't just collecting information that they will try to then later memorize and configure to their existing knowledge. Instead, they are primed for the evidence to prove the point you have already made. This dramatically increases comprehension and long-term memory. So think of it this way. The traditional slide says something like, here's a list of facts, figure out why they matter. What you end up with at best is students memorizing disjointed bits of information. But the assertion evidence method says, here's the truth, now watch me prove it. It puts the information immediately within the context of a claim, which is really another way of saying in the context of a story, because it works with tension and release. But it's not just a style choice. It's a direct application of the science of how students learn. But to fully realize the learning power of PowerPoint, you need one more move with your slides, and that is interaction. So you've cut the clutter with that 3x20 rule, and you flip the structure of your slides to the assertion evidence method. Your slides are now technically superior learning tools. But a great slide deck shouldn't be the master of your classroom. It should be a servant. It's one tool among many. You need to break up the flow to maintain student attention. Your slide deck shouldn't just be delivering content, it should be asking for engagement. Do this in two ways. First, embed interaction. Insert slides that contain a question, a prompt for discussion, a short writing exercise, or a pause and ponder moment. When students know that the slide will cue them to think, to talk, or to write, they will pay attention differently. And second, embed media. Use the hyperlinks or embed features in your presentation to jump straight to a quick video or audio snippet. This breaks the monotony, sorry to say it, of your voice and adds variety without losing the thread of your presentation. And finally, one of the most powerful moves with your slides is perhaps the most counterintuitive. It is strategically blanking your screen. This is the easiest, highest impact trick you can use for managing student attention and cognitive load. And so many instructors overlook it. They just don't do it. So when you're answering a student question or simply telling a story that's a digression that isn't directly related to the current slide, blank the screen. Why? Because if that beautiful slide you've got there with all of its texts and visual supports is still visible, their eyes are going to be tracking that, and their brain is going to be continuing to try to process that visual information while listening to you. But when you blank it, you instantly remove that visual distraction. You force all their working memory to focus solely on what you're saying, dramatically improving the comprehension of your beautiful off-the-cuff response. Effective PowerPoint is not about making slides prettier. It's about making them better for learning. If you commit to the 3x20 rule, the assertion evidence structure, and embedding interaction, you are turning a passive lecture tool into an active learning support. So, what is your first step toward better slides? Are you committing to the 3x20 minimal text rule? Are you finally going to flip the switch to the assertion evidence structure? Let me know in the comments below. If this video has helped you think differently about your next lecture, hit the like button. I've got new videos coming out regularly with practical, dependable, and motivating guidance to make your teaching life better. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.